Matt Slick fail. Logic part 2 of 4. Note, the entirety of this video is based upon Naming a Necessity by Saul Kripke. All quotes are copied from CARM.org under fair use terms. The law of identity from CARM.org. The law of identity states that an object is what it is and is not what it is not. In other words, A equals A. We have shown in previous videos that the logical law of identity is defined many different and varying and contradictory ways. What determines the definition of identity is the logical system that is being utilized. As logical systems vary, so does the definitions of identity. In this presentation, we shall add another consideration of logical identity, which calls into question the universality and absoluteness of this law. Consider the following definitions from dictionary.com. Scapula, anatomy, either of two flat triangular bones, each forming the back part of the shoulder in humans, the shoulder blade, and shoulder blade, the scapula. Clearly we can see from the word meanings, these terms, scapula and shoulder blade, are identical. When identity is derived from word meanings, this is called naming, according to Kripke's terminology. When we refer to the same object, this is called identity by mapping, also according to Kripke terminology. Clearly, when Matt Slick defined identity as it states that an object is what it is and is not what it is not, in other words, A equals A, Matt Slick is using mapping designations. So what happens to the universal law of identity when contradictory terms refer to the same object? We have a conflict between naming identity and mapping identity. Consider the following terms: morning star and evening star. Clearly, the terms have different and contradictory word meanings, naming different things. However, equally clearly, the terms refer to the same object. Mapping to the same object we could call Venus, Hesperus, or Phosphorus. So, in terms of mapping, referring to the same object, we can say A is identical to A is true. However, we can clearly say in terms of naming, referring to word meanings, A is identical to not A is also true. Clearly, Matt Slick is using mapping designation referring to the object being identical to itself when he asserts it states that an object is what it is not what it is not, in other words, A equals A. However, it is equally clear Matt Slick is ignoring identity of naming in word meanings designation. So if Matt Slick is correct, isn't he tacitly saying that the law of identity doesn't apply to naming conventions and only applies to mapping conventions? And from this we ask, how is it the law of identity is universal if it doesn't apply to naming conventions? How can the law of identity be universal or absolute if we can clearly demonstrate in a naming context that A is identical to not A is a true statement? If these things can indeed be explained, it is Matt Slick's responsibility to do so. We should also insist that Matt Slick answer these objections without resorting to the vicious circle fallacy. www.viciouscircleprinciple.com and the video referred to in this slide explains the vicious circle principle and the vicious circle fallacy. Remember, Matt Slick has no formal training in logic or critical thinking. We should not be surprised that he is ignorant and incompetent in these matters.